So I'm going to do a comparison of these deck plugs that I wasn't able to find out much information on, like Facebook groups and all that. I added a anchor light and spreader lights and rewired the steaming light that was existing on my MacGregor 26, and it only had a 2-pin plug that wouldn't even stay connected anyway, so it needed to be replaced. And because of the new lights, I need a 4-pin. So I've installed one of these type before. This is pretty much the most common deck fitting that you can find commercially available. It's about $25 from West Marine. It's sold under the Sea Dog line. I don't know, maybe that's who makes it. I'm not really sure. The Sea Dog one, though, has a rubber cap that's molded into the gasket. I think I like that better. I don't like this chain flying around. And it's got a few problems, and one that made it to where I couldn't even use it. I didn't realize until I already had it halfway installed. One of the problems is these little set screws that go in here. This one's stripped out and I lost it. I could re-tap it if I really needed to, but since I can't use it, I'm not going to worry about that. But since I lost that set screw, this doesn't come apart properly. And when you're pulling that apart, you're relying on the friction of that set screw to hold these two pieces together. So it's not a great design. They're kind of a pain to put together, but they work. I put one on a Catalina 22 and it did okay. But one thing that you can't do, trying to put 4 16-gauge wires through that hole. These have a rubber gasket in here that would probably seal it up pretty nice, but there's no way you're going to get those 4 wires through that hole. Ain't gonna happen. And get it back into there. You might get that stretched over the 4 16-gauge wires, but it's not going to go back in that hole. It's bad enough just trying to get those 4 wires through that hole, but that's doable. That'll fit, and that's the way I installed it on the Catalina 22. I just left that out. The whole thing got covered with heat shrink anyway. This is just uncoated copper terminals on the inside. Those little tiny micro set screws that you need something really small wise to get in there and turn those with. It does have a rubber gasket on that face that would seal against that. On this one, what I don't like about that is if that set screw is loose, nothing indexes this. It could be turned in any direction, and if you were to lose that set screw and you had a big enough hole below that, that could just drop down into the void and you'd have to fish that back out of the hole in your deck. Another problem I had with this one was, and the reason I can't use it, the existing hole in my deck is about the same diameter as where those mounting holes. It just hits the edge. So these screw holes would have gone right at the edge of the existing deck hole. So that doesn't work. And I had to re-drill these out. These come so small that a number 4 screw wouldn't even fit in these 3 mounting screw holes. So I drilled those out for a number 6, which I think is a better choice anyway. The other style that you see commonly, and I haven't found anybody that's willing to share any information on this Aqua Signal, so I just decided to buy it, and I'm going to have to use it because I needed this mounting surface to cover my existing hole. This is a horizontal mount. They make a vertical mount, and it comes with a little diagram that even shows the vertical mount on it. It doesn't really come with instructions, but you shouldn't need instructions for wiring one of these together. After watching this video, you'll be an expert. So this is the deck portion. It's got a plastic lock that goes over these tabs. One thing I don't like about this one so far is this screw that holds this half of the plug into the deck portion is pretty short. It's really hard to get to. I have to take that out of my little screwdriver to get that in there, but that's what holds these two pieces together, and it's just really a pain to get something in there to make that a good, tight, secure connection. It does have 2 O-rings. One O-ring covers this half. The other O-ring, once that's on, it's indexed, it only goes one way. This is all tinned inside, so should hold up to the marine environment. The 16 gauge wires, once they come up through the hole in the gasket and then to here, they have to make a 90-degree turn in there to go into the backside. I don't think that'll be a problem. Seems to be plenty of room in there for wires to work, and this is a 5-pin connection actually, so I have room for expanding. I can add another fancy light to my mast. So that's the deck half, goes together that way, and it has a cap that comes with it that goes on the deck half. There's no cap on either one of these for the half that goes to the mast. For the pigtail that comes out of the mast, this would be wired into here. I really like one feature of this. It has a gasket in here that as you screw that on, you can see that that little gasket will tighten up inside around the wires. So if you put a piece of heat shrink on the 4 wires where it goes into this fitting, it should make a really tight seal. Tinned copper pins. When the wire comes through this hole, kind of has to make a bit of a turn, but plenty of room for 16 gauge wire to go through all of that. This has a plastic instead of a rubber O-ring. I'm not sure why they made that a fairly rigid plastic. And this is indexed, so it will only go one way. It won't go in that way. Got to go that way. You have to hold that in with one finger when you screw this together. And then, like I said, when you tighten that down, it'll crimp down really well on the heat shrink that's on the wires. So these two pieces, get that seated well. A real screwdriver would probably make this job a lot easier, but I think you can get that tight with a long number 1 Phillips. I think that's probably what that is. Can only go one way, obviously. And you make that connection. It has a lock that goes down. And again, I think that's a pretty breakable part. If that did break, there's really nothing holding these together other than friction. So that's kind of a drawback, so take care of that part. But being a horizontal mount, I like it, I think, better than the vertical version. Certainly wouldn't want the vertical version of this. It's got holes big enough for a number 6 screw to mount through. So we'll get it on the boat and see how it turns out.